Hey y'all, this is my lovely wife Courtney. I am
Hi.
James Roy, and this is the Noise Date Night Edition, a podcast where we talk about our weekly date night movie selections and give you the scoop. So this week we watched The King's Man, as we talked about last week, and if you overcame our recommendation against it to watch it, then this is the place to be to see what we thought of it.
hmm
Before we get into that, let's talk about 500 Days of Summer, which is the movie that we watched at home this week, the programming that we fed ourselves this week.
The programming.
And yeah, Courtney's been asking me to watch this movie for a while now because she says she thinks that it's right up my alley, and
Was I wrong?
believe it or not, she was correct. This movie is incredible. I thought it was great. Let's do like we did last week. We'll do one negative and two positives.
Yeah.
And I'll let you go first because I'm a firm believer that chivalry is not dead and that ladies go first.
A negative, I think that just the frustration of Summer and her character and just being like wishy-washy and like you want to like her and I do like her.
No, yeah.
And then she just does something and you're like, ugh, it's so
Ugh.
annoying, but it's so real. So I guess just her inconsistency as a character, but totally also a positive because I love that they don't end up together.
No, yeah.
And I love that Joseph Gordon-Levitt and I love Zooey Deschanel. They are amazing together.
It's like La La Land before it was cool.
Yes. it's Is La La Land cool? I don't know.
I mean, I think it is.
Okay. I think this movie is way better than La La Land. And this was not nominated for anything. There.
No.
I said it.
I see it. Did you give two positives or did you give one? I think you kind of merged
Oh,
them.
sorry. The acting, phenomenal. The storyline, great. I liked the ending. So I guess now 3.
Now 3, okay. It's a lot of positive things to say.
It's up there for me. It's a good one.
For me, let's see, if I'm trying to find the negative, I think I'll go in the same vein as you in that I think as a society, we're kind of like conditioned and trained to like watch movies and see like the boy meets the girl and then they end up together. And so even though it's how it's supposed to go, it's just kind of off to watch a story where they don't end up together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was like a lot of my issue with La La Land as well.
I take that back. It was nominated for a Golden Globe.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean.
This is why we research our own words to make sure
I
that
gotta make sure I'm right.
that we didn't get anything wrong.
I was talking about like Academy Award, but yeah, they were nominated for a lot of like film festival awards, People's Choice
That makes
Award,
sense.
things like that.
It was
Okay,
a really
sorry.
good movie, and so like for my positives, I mean it was classic like A-list, like A1. Joseph Gordon-Levitt was great.
Yeah.
I feel like
He's great.
I feel like they did a good job of painting the picture of like his character was the typical guy who's like everything's going great. I'm with the girl that I
Mhm.
think I'm supposed to be with.
Like
and
playing
this
out
is
the
awesome.
relationship, how it is in his head,
And
which
then
is like so different
it was kind
to
of
what it
like
is to her.
how in the Joker, how like everything is going well
Yeah.
in the eyes of Arthur,
Mm-hmm.
but then they replay the scene and they're like, no, that's not how it happened. And
yeah.
so like they didn't exactly replay the scene, but they showed like her be like, dude, we fight all the time and this is awful.
Yeah.
And like he was like, wait, I thought we had like a dream relationship. And then
Mhm.
I liked also in the end how they kind of redeemed it. They still gave him like they showed their characters go learn from each other and change their points of view.
Mhm.
They showed that like
Yeah.
like one of my favorite parts of La La Land is that they showed that sometimes you think you build it up to be something more than what it is, but it's
Yeah.
a learning block. It's an experience,
For sure.
and it helps make you better if you let it.
Yes.
So Summer improved, and then even in the end, Summer talked to Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character. What was his name again?
Tom.
Tom. Summer talked to Tom in the end, and then even brought him back around to his own mentality, his own thoughts
Yeah.
at the beginning,
Yeah.
just in time for him to meet a girl that was probably better for him.
Autumn.
We don't really, Autumn. We don't really get a whole lot of that story.
No, I think
But-
it's just the idea of like she was for a season and he learned a lot from her, and
They were both named after seasons.
um,
Summer and then autumn.
I think that's on purpose.
At the end of summer, autumn
Foreshadowing.
will come.
That people come in and out of your life for a season, and it's not a bad thing, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with you.
Yeah.
But it's good to learn from experiences and relationships. So
100%.
I like it.
100%.
go watch it if you haven't seen it. It's on, what was it on? Hulu?
It was on Hulu.
Oh yeah, it's on
And,
Hulu.
you
if have
don't
Hulu.
you don't even need like a high level attachment or like other subscription on top of Hulu to get it. It's just there.
Yeah,
So
with a few ads, but yeah, it's there.
you should have to watch an ad every once. That's cool.
No big deal.
But on that note, I guess we'll talk about what we came here to talk about, which is The King's Man.
Okay.
So The King's Man is a prequel. Some will tell you that it is Kingsman 3, but realistically, that's like saying episode 3 is episode 7 or episode
For Star Wars, if you didn't know what he was talking about.
Episode 6. I don't know how the comparison's there though. So a lot of people I think have that going for them. This movie stars Gemma Arterton, Ralph Fiennes, Harris Dickinson, Rice Ifans, and you may know him from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I want to say no, he was in Amazing Spider-Man 1. He's a lizard dude. And then
He is the lizard dude.
and then Google, in their infinite wisdom, has credited a lot of actors from the first 2 Kingsman movies because Google is probably using an AI at this point. So who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But this movie was released on December 22nd. Box office 75 million, which I personally thought was surprisingly high. Still doing a little research into what the budget was, but just early impressions. I thought it was production budget 81 million, so they still haven't made back the budget on the movie.
I'm sure they will
They
eventually
probably
over
will.
time, but yeah.
To break even is interesting, but just early thoughts from me on this movie. I felt like it was one of those situations where if they had made this movie and then tried to make the Kingsman, Secret Service and Golden Circle, then they wouldn't have been able to make the sequels because this movie would have flopped. A lot of the traffic to this movie is probably due to the prestige of the franchise, but they lose every bit of what made the first 2 Kingsman movies great.
Yeah.
In the process by becoming too serious in trying to tell an origin story that doesn't remain true to the other 2 movies. That's my short, condensed take on this movie. What do you think, babe?
Yeah, I think that as a standalone film, I could do without. It's like, okay, they're British who are really good at fighting and, like, I don't know, good at what they do, kind of. But then you're like, isn't that what James Bond is for?
Who knows?
Yeah, I think, there's just, it's a lot. I think there were some good scenes where I was like, oh, this is kind of entertaining. And then something would happen. I'm like, why? Why would they do that?
Why?
I don't know.
No, it was
It's
wild.
like subpar for me.
Agreed, 100%.
Definitely a doing your laundry and watching a movie type of vibe, if you know what I mean.
This is one of those that's borderline for me. It's like, so for my example that I usually give,
I don't think it was necessarily necessary. They could have done it in a voiceover and a flashback. I mean, I don't know.
They probably could have.
Yeah.
But to me, the example is like movies that come on FX, the channel, during like the day, and like if it comes on, you have to make the determination of if you want to, go through the effort to find the remote and switch the channel, or if you're okay
Just like playing in the background.
with being presented with this movie again.
But I wouldn't play it in the background if you have children.
I wouldn't play in the background if you have children. Personally, I would be torn as to if I wanted to make the effort to get the remote to change the channel, but it's almost worth it to do it.
I think because the other ones were pretty good. So it's like, I don't know. It just lacks all the luster that the other 2 have. So
My expectations were certainly too high for this movie.
absolutely.
But on that note, I guess we'll get into the plot or the review of the movie. So at this point, we're gonna put up a spoiler alert, and then we're gonna get into. I'm still trying to find a name for this bit now that it's not a plot review. I think it's like
Movie recap.
the big 3. We'll do the big 3 for now. So I'm gonna
See the challenge to break the movie into 3 parts. Ready,
so
go.
I'm about to break this movie into 3 parts. This is my bit, and then Courtney's got the negative Nancy bit. So here we go. Um, so if we wanted to break this movie into 3 parts, we could look at it this way. The first stage is, we get a little origin of like, what, Ralph Fiennes's character, the Duke of Oxford, goes through. Duke of Oxford. I hope there's not too many British people listening. I'm super embarrassed, by the way. I just said Oxford. But anyway, his wife dies in a conflict, and long story short, she tells him to like keep the son away from war, essentially. And so he does that. We flash forward, and the first part can be condensed into this: the son wants to go to war, and the dad's trying to keep him away from war. And then we enter the second part. The second part of the movie is, hey, Ralph is a part of this, or sorry, the Duke of Oxford is part of this secret organization that uses, the house hands to relay information and try and prevent world conflict, which is really cool. And he lets his son Conrad in on this. Now, this introduces one of my big issues with the movie, which is that Conrad is the only source of youth. He is the Taron Egerton character of this movie. In the fact that he brings literally the only source of what could be the original style of the King's Man.
Yeah.
He is the source of that.
For sure.
And so we find out...
They definitely market it that way. So.
And so he gets brought along on a mission, which also brings one of my big issues was that Rasputin's character was super cringe, super awkward.
So
played
awkward.
by Rhys Ifans.
Reese, I'm pretty sure it's Reese.
Reese, it's spelled so incredibly
That's
hard.
how you spell Reese.
That's not how you spell Reese.
Yes.
Reese is like Reese Witherspoon?
No, like the guy version of Reese.
I guess.
No, it is.
I trust you, babe, because
Okay.
you probably have done more research into how to
we
spell
asked Siri
names than
how
I
to
have.
pronounce it.
But that whole scene with Rasputin and the Duke of Oxford, which gave the Duke of Oxford in this event loses his at the beginning of the movie, like gets shot in the leg, and so he can't hardly walk well. And then he regains the ability to walk by some weird like. Okay. She just showed me how to pronounce it, and it's Reese. I never doubted it because Courtney is 99.999% of the time correct.
That's right.
But there's an awkward interaction where like the background on Rasputin, in case you didn't know the lore around this Russian dude. He was like a professor of the word of God and was like widely regarded for like decision making in the pre-Karl Marx, Russia, pre-Putin Russia kind of thing, where before communism. And so what he said kind of went, he had his hand, puppeteering the entire Russian oligarchy on like what was to happen. And he did this by making weird displays that were connected to, religion. And like basically the implication here is that there's some merit to it and that he had some sort of healing ability that was giving him the ability to have this hold. But anyway, the whole scene is awkward. They're
super cringe.
They're like trying to use the kid as bait, and the kid's boring, so he ends up taking the Duke of Oxford in. And yeah, there's a lot of implications that I don't want to get too deep into it because I'm cringing thinking about it.
Yeah.
But there's that whole fight, and after this mission, you're like totally have to believe that Conrad wants to be a part of this service now.
Yeah.
This thing that's going on, because it's so much cooler than being a soldier, but he's still dead set on going to war. So we get to see him go to war. He has this whole scene where he does this heroic thing and then he dies.
Total 1917.
He just gets back into the trench, and it's the worst possible way. So they killed off their youth in this second part.
Yeah.
By literally, he gets back to the trenches and he's posing as a different guy because he got sent back to London in his normal, orders. And one guy's like, "Oh, so you're this guy? Why don't you have a Scottish accent?" He's a German, pulls up his rifle, and before the dude can explain anything, shoots him in the head.
Yeah, it's really...
And it's just so anticlimactic.
Yeah,
because Conrad was a character I wanted to like, and I wanted him to be a big part of the movie.
He's very likable.
And they were like, and now you couldn't, that's the problem with this being a prequel, is that you kind of come to a point where it's like, what is Conrad? And I'm thinking, if you set the timing right, Conrad could realistically be Colin Firth's character Harry Hart.
Oh yeah, that's what I thought it was going to
Maybe
be.
he's like Conrad, and then he changes what he goes by later on down the line. The timeline was there, and it would have been cool,
I
but
thought it would have been way cooler.
instead we're left with a dead him, and
I
that's
think
kind
I
of
went into it thinking he was a young Colin Firth, but that was my
and
thinking.
we leave the second part with the Duke of Oxford mourning his son's death. There's kind of some underlying tones where it's like, okay, we think we've prevented, England being destroyed during the World War by keeping Russia involved, whatever. Because that's essentially what they're doing is they're like manipulating history, manipulating like events throughout history to try and maintain order and prevent like unnecessary death, essentially.
Yeah.
So at this point, the Duke of Oxford has to overcome the fact that he's like a pacifist and he doesn't want to be anymore. Hardly seems like he could remain a pacifist after like a lot of the events of the movie. But, either way, he comes through that. And then we enter the third part, which is, the Kingsmen forming as an organization as we know it in the future movies. We get to see him take down the big bad guy that's kind of been pulling the strings, this council that's been like trying to force, trying to crush England. And it turns out it's some dude that was like one of his admiral friends or general friends, like subordinate who's like really Scottish. And it's like super like, okay, I am unhappy with the way this has turned out. The villain's not impressive. The only youth in the movie's been killed off. And to top it off, this is like your big scene where you use like, how the first two Kingsmen were shot, where there was like cool fight scenes, and it was like really I don't know, energetic is a term. This just feels like a cut and paste action movie, as opposed to the Kingsmen, which used like certain camera angles and certain like styles of a certain style of shooting that made the movies like stand out in a crowd of like movies, like I would say movies that we've seen, Cop Shop, Protege, movies that like didn't really set themselves apart from an action perspective, and just kind of had like, this is action. This movie's an action movie, and so you now have the action that we promised you. And so that's kind of how this movie went for me.
For sure.
And then that we reached the end, the Kingsmen form, and there we go. Now the organization is set. I mean, maybe they're just waiting long enough for Taron Egerton to age so they can do a third Kingsman that's set like long after, like when he's older.
I guess, or like they
know.
wanted to do maybe another one in this franchise and then introduce Colin Firth's character.
Who knows?
But I feel like they shouldn't.
They should really leave this alone.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings us into our next part. So let's do our one negative and two positives. Should be pretty easy to find a negative this week. I don't know if you remember last week, I kind of struggled to find something that was negative about Sing 2.
I know, we really liked Sing 2.
We really liked that movie. So let's look into it, babe. I'll let you go first, because like I said, I'm nothing but a gentleman. And so
I would say
what do you got?
negative. Definitely the storyline was just subpar. It was flat. It was nothing surprising. No amazing twists and turns. Yeah, nothing great. Also, all the cringe scenes was just a little like at one point James and I were just looking at each other like, this is
Like,
so awkward.
Should we just leave and then like act like we saw it?
Thought about that for sure.
No one would
How
know.
many negatives are we supposed to just one? Positive. I love Conrad.
Conrad was cool.
And when he died, I lost interest in the movie. So
oh my gosh, same. Ugh.
Yeah, that's my bit.
Okay, that's the only positive of the movie. So
Yeah. Oh, I did like that the villains, like, what do you call it? Hideaway house or hideout? What do you call that? The
his
lair. Yeah, his lair is on like this top of a mountain, like this very slim piece of mountain that has like these. Or are they goats or something?
Yeah, they were goats.
I liked where the lair was.
Okay, that's a solid.
That was a cool point. That was a cool thing.
For me, so negative. I'm torn between a lot of things, like Courtney said, but I think I'm gonna settle on Rasputin's character. Really, just that one scene, like where him and
if
the
you
Duke
watch
of
it,
Oxford.
you'll know which one.
And if you know, if
so
you've seen
cringy.
it, it's if you know, you know. I'm not going to go into great detail because I'm cringing thinking about it. So that's my big negative. There was a lot to choose from. And bonus negative here. Close second for me was Conrad's character dying in such a lame way and really just dying at all.
Yeah.
Let's see positives. Gemma Arterton, I thought did really well as
She did
Polly.
great. Mm-hmm.
And I
I
don't
think
want
they
to.
acted well because they're
And-
great actors.
Yeah, so the acting was good.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. Like I said, there was some
Mhm.
shortcomings in the storyline and the script.
Yeah.
But I think that the acting carried this movie enough. It's not surprising this movie is probably going to break even. I didn't walk out expecting it to be a movie that was going to be like a $5 million like reminiscence or like a lot of like Cop Shop, like Protege. A lot of the movies we've seen that pulled less than 5 million in the global box office.
Although I still think Cop Shop was really good.
I thought Cop Shop was good. I thought it was a pretty good
watch
movie.
that one if you haven't.
You should try and watch that one if you haven't. And then I guess my second positive, if I can find one, yeah, like you said, I mean, Conrad was good until he died. I felt like they did his character dirty.
Yeah.
It kind of like reminds me. It gives merit to something I heard the other day. Kind of a segue here. Not into a new topic, but back to Christmas. The Santa Claus 3. Bernard was not in it, and I read an article recently that said the actor who played Bernard, which I don't know his name off the top of my head. He was in Numbers. He was in New Girl. It was like David something.
He was not in New Girl.
He was in New Girl. He played Nick.
No, that's not him.
It's totally him. I showed you on IMDb.
It's not him.
It is. You can look it up. Anyway, he said that he got offered to come on for Santa Claus 3 and that he declined it because he read the script and they did Bernard dirty.
I hate to again be right, but David Krumholtz is Bernard.
He's Bernard and he's also in New Girl.
No, he is not.
Look him up.
Jake is the name. Jake Johnson is the guy in New Girl. You didn't even watch New Girl.
What? I could have swore I
Wow.
looked it up when we were in Big Bear and that I was right. So I guess I now have to admit that I was wrong. And that once again, based on statistical probability and general, universal conclusions, that Courtney is
really
correct.
Liked New Girl, so I was like,
Courtney is
and
right.
I also really like Santa Claus.
But he was in Numbers. I was correct about that. So let's focus on the positives here.
Okay.
But all that to say, I think that if I was Harris Dickinson, who played Conrad, and I read that script, I would have told them, you either give Conrad a better story or I'm not going to play him. Now, this is all assuming that this guy is like, if he's an actor who's like trying to get his big break, this is probably, good or bad, the exposure's there, and he's probably getting looks for like other roles because he did a good job. So I can't say I would actually not accept the role, but I would definitely make a fuss to the director. I'd be like, hey, you don't have to do Conrad like that. But anyways, let's talk about how the critics thought about this movie before we do our negative Nancy discussion. So I've got my big three right here. This is the first time in several weeks that IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, and Metacritic has shown up on Google as the top three. It usually tries to tell me that like 90% of Facebook users thought it was a good movie.
Maybe people on Facebook aren't watching it.
This is an all-time low for Google users, though. Google users, only 85% of them like this movie. And usually it's in the 90s.
Oh,
So,
really? Interesting.
We're seeing low numbers. But what do you got, babe? What's up with the...
Oh, I thought you were going through the critics.
I'll go through the critics while you pull up the negative Nancy's.
Okay.
Let's do that. IMDb, 6.8 out of 10. Little high, I think. Rotten Tomatoes, 43%. Once again, don't know if this is the audience or the critics score. I can only assume it's the critics. And then Metacritic is at a 44%, which is probably deep in the yellow. Okay, so that's the critic is 42%. The audience scores 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is I'm gonna have to disagree with the audience. I am the audience, but I also am an amateur movie critic, and so I would put myself on the side of the tomato meter. I feel like I'm in touch with the movie critics. This is great.
I mean,
this is a breakthrough moment for us.
Okay. Let's keep the word amateur in front of that.
Let's keep it. But what? So
we're just two people who have opinions,
let's try and find some poetry in our next bit, the negative Nancy bit, where we review the
I found a good one.
1-star reviews. Let's do it. She's already got a good one.
This is by user Oz Over the Rainbow. Love the username, by the way. It says a ridiculous film, a totally ridiculous film that twists historical fact into a stale pretzel and feeds it to its ignorant audience.
I did feel like I was eating a stale pretzel for the entire
I think
movie.
if you don't know anything about history, I didn't know much about Russian history, so I was very much like, okay.
There was like
Okay.
vague references to
And
history.
then James would be like, this is actually what happened and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, this just makes this more cringe. Yeah.
I mean, every time Rasputin was on the screen, I was trying to think of that one song, the Rasputin, just to kind of like distract myself from the fact that he was just not fun to watch.
Every movie is worse than the previous one. Such a potential going to waste 2 hours that I will never get back. And the last time I waste my time with the Kingsman, I feel like there's going to be a lot of people that they're going to lose because they're going to have to redeem themselves if the franchise is supposed to keep going.
The real Kingsman 3 is going to have to be
fire.
Super fire.
Yeah, like bring Conrad back, but like his far off descendant or brother or something. I don't know.
What descendant? It's not like he had a child.
What if the dad got remarried and then had a child from Polly and then
his half brother
he like kind of looks like him? No? Okay.
Maybe it's Polly Hart. And then
I mean, there's a lot of people that do like it. I'm not saying that not everybody likes it. It just wasn't really my cup of tea as far as like my standard of films. Like I said, this will probably be on FX and you might watch it and enjoy it. But sure, if you want to go waste your money, go for it.
Yeah.
Most of the people just really liked the first one best, which I agree. The first one was the best one. So
yes, 100%. 100%. The villain was
6.8.
I felt like the second one was good too, though.
The second one was pretty good.
I didn't feel like anything was lost on it.
No,
because they kept the same style.
They did, but I like the plot line of the first one. It's just the first one is always best when you're like just introducing this new world and this new group of people and just like their chemistry works and yeah, I love it.
No, yeah, I agree.
Okay, I'm done.
All right, so the Negative Nancy's were out in full force today. And if you have ever read 1-star reviews before going to do anything, this bit was for you. So
I'm all about the 1-star reviews before I do anything ever.
The first thing I do, you got to set the filter to 1-star reviews and be like, okay,
That's literally what I do. Food, shopping.
It's like, do people
Movies.
have legitimate complaints about this, or am I reading these 1 stars and going, yeah, I would still buy this?
Yeah, no, that's why I like it.
But now we move on to our rating of the movie, and as you can guess, it's going to be quite low. It's on our favorite scale of 1 to 7. So, babe, I'll let you kick us off. Scale 1 to 7.
4.
4? Yeah, I was thinking that was where I was at too.
It's just it didn't do anything for me.
What's that one TikTok trend? It's like I would give you a 0, but that's not possible. So I will give you a 1. But I would give you a 4. Like I said, it was good. It was just kind of run of the mill for me though. Like I considered a 3.5 at some point, but I came to the conclusion of 4.
I know, reading some people's comments and how they did like some parts, I was like, okay, I did like that part. I was entertained in that part. But overall, I think that it's a subpar spy movie.
Pretty much, exactly. There was just some good parts, which is why I give it a 4.
I definitely thought the Bond movie was better.
It certainly wasn't Cry Macho, that's for sure. Which is our only movie to receive a 0.
Cry Macho was bad.
It was.
But you can watch it for free, I think, on Redbox or something. I don't know.
Probably. I mean, I would be giving it away for free because that's the only way you're going to get anyone to watch it. Or it's like
the top movie you rented on Redbox.
Seriously? We both fell asleep during that one. If you don't remember.
Yeah, absolutely fell asleep. Like twice. I fell asleep. I woke up, watched it for a little bit, and then I fell asleep again.
I think we pieced the movie together by like, okay, you were awake during this part. What happened? Okay, well, you were awake during this part. Okay, cool.
It's all right. Clint's living his best life, you know?
Like someone walked by us on the way out of the theater and was like, hey, you got to get up. We got to get the next group of people in here.
They didn't say that to us.
They might have. No, they didn't actually do that. But anyways, let's get into what we're going to watch next week.
Yeah, what's out?
So over the next few weeks, there's a few movies coming out. January is kind of a dead zone. We'll probably bounce back and forth between streaming services and the theater.
Yeah.
But like I've told you in the past, we're 1 week ahead. So the movie we watched this past week that we will be reviewing on our next episode is American Underdog with Zachary Levi. And I'll tell you, if you hadn't seen it, I think it's really good. granted, my expectations were low from one perspective, which was in the past, the acting in Christian-based movies has been pretty subpar.
Agreed.
So I was like, Zach Levi's going to be carrying this movie. And so I didn't have high expectations, but my expectations were shattered by this movie. It was pretty good. The football element was good. You know, I felt like it hit all the wickets. There was like some changes I might have made to it, but anyway, not getting too deep into it. We'll give you our full opinion on next week's episode.
But go see it.
So go see it.
You can hear our thoughts about it.
So you can hear our thoughts on it.
We loved it.
And then we've got the 355, which is out. Reviews are lower than expected, but still excited to go see that one. A nice, female action spy thriller.
Yeah, no, I definitely like female action spy thriller, so that should be interesting.
We haven't seen Matrix 4. I don't think it's playing in the theater that's right near us.
It is.
It is?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they brought it back?
I think so.
Okay. So we might go see that.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't mind going and seeing it, but I still need to go see the first 3 Matrix movies. I think this one's going to be a lot like The King's Man, where like it's going to be carried by like the fandom of the trilogy that happened before it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to do it necessarily, or it could have done super well, but I mean, without looking at the numbers.
No, I mean, IMDb users rated a 5.7, Metascore 63. So, I mean, it's not terrible.
So, I don't know how much it's made in the box office. I could imagine this one will break like even and maybe do a little better.
Probably.
Maybe. And then other ones coming out, Redeeming Love is a movie that's coming out. I don't really know a whole lot specifically about the plot on that one.
It's based off of a book.
I'll read from Google for you. Angel, who was sold into prostitution as a child, has survived through hatred and self-loathing in 1850s California. When she meets Michael Jose, she discovers there is no brokenness that love can't heal. So that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Deep Future, Marry Me with J-Lo and Owen Wilson.
Oh, yeah, Marry Me. I do want to see that one.
And then also another near future for our streaming pick is already out, Tragedy of Macbeth. So we got a lot going for us here in the near future, but thanks for hanging with us today.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Like, follow, comment, subscribe. I'm on TikTok we're on TikTok at The Noise Date Night, Twitter The Noise Date Night. Courtney's on Twitter. If you want her unadulterated opinion on movies, she's been giving it there. It's Courtney Flores.
Yep, pretty much just going through streaming services and watching things that are super hyped.
And so she actually got her tweet. Was it retweeted or was it liked?
It was liked by Kurt Warner.
By Kurt Warner about American Underdog. So she's got a little clout going into this game. She's a big deal. Big deal. No kids meal. Although she will get a kids meal every once in a while.
I was gonna say I love the McDonald's kids meal. And the Chipotle kids meal is really great too.
No, yeah. My personal Twitter is M1 Texans fan, but I do more sports stuff there. So if you're into sports, that's where you can find me. And yeah, that pretty much does it. So thanks for hanging with us. We'll see you next week for another rendition of The Noise Date Night, a podcast where we review weekly date night movie selections.
Yeah.
You've been Courtney Danielle, and I've been James Roy.
I have been Courtney Danielle.
And I'm really bad at finishing podcasts.
All right, bye.
Bye.
See you next week.